Hey, what's up, Print Hustlers? This is Bruce from Printavo, Simple Shop Management Software. We've got a very special guest today on the podcast, Luke Ryerkerk. Am I saying that last name right?
Heck yeah. No, you got it right.
Awesome. Luke's joining us. He's got an awesome background. He's part of the Ryonet team, but he also runs a shop too. He's also heavily into direct-to-garment. He's heavily into screen printing. He's been just printing for years and years. I've got a lot of questions for him today, so let's just kick it off. But first, Luke, thanks so much for being able to join us.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that introduction. It's awesome. I hope I'll live up to the awesome guest request there. So, yeah, no problem.
If you could just, I mean, for people who are watching this video, and if you're not, Luke's got some ink, it looks like, in the background, some Wilflex ink or something, but where are you right now?
So I'm in my shop here in Waco, Texas. We're actually doing a video series on converting a two-car garage over to a full-fledged screen printing shop. And specifically with this shop, we actually are running screen printing and direct-to-garment printing side by side in the same space. And
really?
So versus my other shop in Tennessee, we have those spaces separated out. Most of the shops that I work with as well, whether they're small or large, typically are going to have those separated out. But the biggest thing that we wanted to do with this one was show that you can take a typical two-car garage and get tons of things out of it. I mean, some of the best quality prints that I've worked with customers to Ryonet have come out of some of the smallest shops. I mean, garage shops, some people are afraid to talk about and say that they're a garage shop or admit that. And I think you should boast about it within the community all the time, because you can do so much out of your home, out of your garage, or even if you're renting a small space. I mean, it's really cool. So that was a challenge we took on, and it's pretty neat. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but we actually have a new video coming out on that series where we talk about what we did with the garage door. It's pretty cool. This wall that you can see right here, there's a dark room on the other side of it. And again, this is all built within this little shop. But we've got two DTGs, our Riley Hopkins 300. We've got a neat Vastex dryer over here. And then we run everything through this little guy, and it's awesome. You know, my wife's business, Trendy Cactus, is pumping out shirts all day, every day. And then we do a lot of printing with the polyprint. I do a lot of R&D out of here. So it's been great. We've loved it a lot since we finally finished it.
So to understand, so you're full-time at Ryonet, helping on the direct-to-garment side, and then run this shop. Did you mention it was two shops that you're running after hours?
Kind of. So the original shop that I started, and what brought me to Ryonet, was a family shop that we started back in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's actually outside of Knoxville, called Powell. So that shop, I still co-own it. I don't do very much at all in the day-to-day stuff. And then this shop, we actually started kind of on a whim a couple years ago with my wife. Her sister had kids, and we wanted to get them some custom stuff. And I hadn't really been exposed to the kids side of the industry very much. And we were blown away with how expensive things were. So I called up my shop, that my family shop that we've had for a long time, printed some stuff. Her sister loved it. Everyone that they talked to loved it. We thought, well, let's do a little business on it. And I've had direct-to-garment printers in our shops. Basically, we started our original shop over 10 years ago now. Pretty quickly, we got really good at simulator process and four-color process. So people really liked that high color, high detail stuff. At the time, it was really big in our area. But they only wanted 12, 24 pieces and stuff. And for typical screen printing, setting up a 6-color job for 12 pieces is just asinine. You hate it. So we got into DTG really quick because of that. It was a necessity thing. So when we
this was all because of kids' clothes?
Yeah. Or no. So now fast forward.
Okay.
And we wanted to do the kids' clothes thing. But we didn't want to keep tons and tons of stock of pre-printed designs. You know, especially today, things are moving so fast. You don't know what's going to sell.
Sure.
So we went the direct-to-garment route. We had kind of done the testing of this idea with the shop that was already started, and it had direct-to-garment in it. So when we started this one, we started with just direct-to-garment. As we moved to Waco, we decided to do a full conversion, and Ryan and myself and a couple other people at Ryan came up with this crazy idea about doing a garage shop thing. And now here we are with this really cool space. So it's fun. If you're ever in the Waco or DFW area, give me a call.
That's amazing. That's really cool. So wait, first tell me a little bit about Trendy Cactus. So this is custom. Is this like a brand kids clothing, or is this custom? People come to you, and that's the niche is kids clothing.
So it's a brand online. Like 99% of the sales are online, and then she recently started working through this boutique locally as well. But if you just search for Trendy Cactus, you'll see the Etsy site, for instance. That's where the majority of her stuff is. Which, by the way, if you're not on Etsy and you have a direct-to-garment printer or you're a screen printer, set it up. I mean, there's a ton of work that goes into making it successful, but man, it's been great for us, and we really like it. So, little plug for Etsy there. But yeah, so basically we have a couple hundred designs. People choose whatever they want. Some of them are fully customizable, and other ones are just pick your design, pick your size, and we ship it to you. But what's really great is, and that's why direct-to-garment printing for that was such a good fit. We stock all blanks, and then we just have all of our designs set up either the night before, whatever is due, or the day that she's going to be printing. Elizabeth will go through and set the designs up, drag them into the print queues, and hit go. So it's really great. It's a really great process. We have the fastest turnaround on there right now, and that's what's really helped us soar with that. So that's that part of it. And we've been getting over the years requests to do custom work, and I typically will just send that back to the shop back in Texas for requests, and they can handle it. But we now are doing a lot of higher end apparel lines and stuff like that. We're getting into doing more of, and what's great is we can do proof of concept on the direct-to-garment, and then we do full production or non-screen printing. That's where the polyprint really started soaring for us too, was we can get that color replication, get that, I call it a screen print white, that screen print looking white with a direct-to-garment printer. It's really tough to get it, and I've been able to get it with the new printer that we're using. So that's why that part is growing really.
What's the printer you're using now?
So we have an F2000 still at the moment. Our main one is the new Polyprint machine. So it's the Polyprint TextJet Echo 2. It's the one that we unveiled at ISS Long Beach. And what's really cool is I got a call, this back in I think August 2018, from Roger and Ryan, and they were telling me about this direct-to-garment printer that we were thinking about bringing on, and they wanted some of my input and wanted me to fly up there. Well, I was already flying up to headquarters anyways, and I answered the phone at the Portland airport, so it was pretty funny. And so I got on this printer, started messing around with it. And backstory, I've looked at printers and used tons of these different printers. I mean, I've had Brothers, I've had Anajets, the Epson's printers. I've had a ton of different ones, and I've worked with just about all of them. And so when they said they wanted me to look into this guy and give thumbs up, I initially liked it, but wanted to dive in even deeper. So they sent it down to the shop here, and all the spare parts possibly needed. And I beat the sucker up, in all honesty, and it passed every test. And the biggest thing it did for me was how well it printed the white. We also had it sitting in a warehouse for like 3 weeks, and it sat on trucks, and it sat at our print shop for about 2 weeks. So about 6 weeks total, that printer originally sat with ink in it, which for direct-to-garment printing, and anyone who's listening who has a direct-to-garment printer out there, it's a big no-no, right? And we plugged it in, did a couple head cleanings, fired it up, and printed beautifully. So that was a big selling point for me right off the bat. The print quality has been amazing. I went over to Greece, which is where they're manufactured, when we started giving the thumbs up to it, to meet the team and see what they're working on as well. And that's where we really realized that we were hitting it out of the park, because as a company, Polyprint, they originally were started as a screen printing supplier and manufacturer back in the 70s. And then over the years, they started getting into digital printing. And in 2000, they made the decision to switch to all digital. And they started working on their first DTG in 2001. They released the first version of a DTG by them in 2005. And then the one that we have, the Echo 2, is just their newest model. So they have thousands of them out in the field over in Europe. And then we're just kind of bringing them over to the United States with this new Echo 2 mainly.
That's interesting. Let me take a step back about in just direct-to-garment in a shop. So obviously, this is a brand, right?
Right.
Which it sounds like for this use case, and I'm pulling up Trendy Cactus on Etsy, and it's really cool. And you can see, I could definitely see how this is great for fulfilling these types of shirts, right? There's tons of colors. There's a bunch of different SKUs. I'm sure you can pump these out quickly. If somebody is starting a brand very similarly to that, do you feel like if they're ready to buy a machine, this is a good machine to buy, or like when was a good transition to buy it and bring it in house versus allowing somebody else to fulfill it?
Yeah, for us, it was a good transition pretty quickly because we saw the market potential specifically with that company. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I tell everyone, if you have the customer base or if you have the market potential to bring it in-house, that's absolutely the time you need to do it. Unfortunately, there's not a number you can put on that because with everyone it's different. I can't say when you're going to sell 10,000 pieces a month, you should bring something in. I mean, no one can ever say that, unfortunately, right? Anyone who does, either one, they're only speaking towards their specific instance. Because I could tell you the number for me or for Trendy Cactus, but it would not be the same for you or even a guy right next door, possibly, right? Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing is for that, an apparel brand, the way that we wanted to do it, high amounts of pieces of artwork, low overhead in inventory was the business model. And cute things printed on baby clothes is just awesome. So
sure.
That's why it worked out for us. Now, typically what I deal with as well is people who are an initial screen printing company and they have a need because people are always asking for lower order number or lower quantities of shirts and things like that. And like our original company, that was why we wanted to get into, because we had a customer base who wanted these low number of orders with high detail artwork. Mm-hmm. Or if you're a shop where people are constantly coming in and saying, and I know people who hear this have experienced this, someone comes in and says, hey man, I'm in this band, we have this show this weekend, I'm going to end up ordering 1,000 shirts, but I'm going to need 4 this weekend,
right? But
can I get the 1,000 shirt price, or whatever. We used it in the original shop also as a way for us to quickly say, hey, awesome, congrats on your band, I'll totally buy a CD, but if you want 4 shirts, they're $20 a piece, period.
Sure. So in the screen printing shop, when did you buy the direct-to-garment printer?
Really quickly. We bought it, I'd say within the first year, we bought that printer because...
And just paid cash or financed it or how?
We financed it. We did a leasing deal with a $1 buyout, and it worked out really well for us.
Do you remember what the payments roughly were? Like, and did you say that, hey, we need to, let's say it's $500 a month, X amount is what we have to print to cover this, or how did you think about it?
Yeah, totally. So when we bought it, we bought the machine. Originally, we bought the machine and a couple other pieces of equipment along with it. Since we were taking out a lease loan, we were doing a lease program, we went ahead and added some things in. So our payment was at the time like $800 a month, and the machine we had bought originally was a pretty expensive machine. It was an Anajet, and so that was the very first machine, which was an interesting time. And then we ended up moving on to a brother, which they still run the 381 in that shop, and that's been a great machine too. I can't say anything bad about that machine. But yes, we went through the numbers and we said, okay, number one, we're already spending so much time setting up these high color jobs. So we would save so much amount of time right off the bat. So there's a value. Number two, we could also, with this machine, take care of those people who just need 6 shirts or the one-offs here and there and stuff like that. So we provide a service, which when you're doing a service on just straight one-offs, custom artwork every single time, it's really based on a service that will pay itself off over time, right? So I'm going to do this thing for you, one-off shirt, because I know you run this company or you're involved with this organization that will have a need at one point that I can really grow this customer. So we did the numbers, and the numbers worked for us mainly on a time standpoint. And I have this saying that I've said for years, and I'll continue to say it for years, where screen printers do not make money printing shirts, but they make money selling shirts. So if you can really focus on selling shirts and just kind of keep that idea in your mind, what do I need to do to give me the opportunity to sell more shirts, and always keep that as a decision maker. It's not the only decision maker, of course, when you're looking at business decisions, but it needs to be a key one, because why does the average person get an automatic? So they can print faster, so they can pump more jobs out. Well, why do they want to pump more jobs out? Well, if you're spending less time on press and you're your 2-man crew, then you can spend more time marketing and selling yourself. Why do we buy DTG? So we could fix problems faster and spend more time making the bigger deals. look at Trendy Cactus. Why do we get a DTG? So that we could have more designs out there and spend less money with overhead and just turn and burn really quickly. So that means that we can spend more time marketing. We can spend more time making phone calls. We can spend more time doing art. It's all for a lot of those really a way to sell more in a time thing. The cost factor was always a tough thing too. So we actually developed with the screen printing side a pricing matrix where outside of one color white on a black shirt, we could sell a shirt, anything that was 24 pieces or less, we typically would throw it on the direct-to-garment printer. And our prices actually were averaged out to where even if I quoted as a screen printing design and I decided to do it on DTG, I'm not losing any money and I'm at least making some because I've saved time. With the poly print, that's allowed us to do even more because the ink costs are so much less than the average DTG that it allows me to kind of extend that gamut. So a lot of things that I've been doing lately when we've been testing this printer more and more is actually working with local businesses and talking with them about kind of some of the struggles they've had. And it's all the same thing that you hear, to get a good price, you got to buy a bunch, but you don't know if you're going to be able to sell that design or that shirt. So having a DTG allows you to do these proof of concepts, and you're charging for this stuff too. Like that, I want to be very clear. You're doing a proof of concept.
Did you alter your pricing matrix after you bought it?
A little bit, yeah. So
up or down?
Yeah, up. For anything that was under 24 pieces, it went up a tad. So it two things happened. It extended from our minimum being 12 to 1. That gap between 12 and 24 went up just a little bit at the time. And
why do you feel like it went up?
Time. It just went up time because
Got it.
Time and the cost of ink is mainly what it was. So with screen printing, your problem is all the time that goes into setting up the job. And with direct-to-garment printing, sometimes your time goes into how long it takes to print. So I'm mainly talking about that when you are doing a job that's full color front, full color back on dark shirts, that's when time becomes a factor, a real big factor with direct-to-garment, right? And then the ink cost. Ink costs on DTG are going to be substantially higher than screen printing, of course. So that was really the major factor. But what you'll find is that with most direct-to-garment printing settings, you have this benchmark of 24 pieces. And again, it depends on the shop. So this is not set in stone. This shop, it's actually more like 42 now with the polyprint. But let's say 24 is kind of like your fulcrum, your tipping point. With DTG, as you are printing less shirts under 24, your profit can go up because of the smaller amount of time it takes you to do it versus traditional screen printing. When you hit that mark in most shops, which is at 24, and you go screen printing over DTG, your profit goes up because you're spending less time for the course of the job printing. For me, I really look at that as a time factor alongside with the ink cost, but printers make money selling shirts, not printing shirts. So
what is, you talk about the ink cost, roughly what is the ink cost for a white garment versus dark garment?
So for a white garment versus a dark garment, the biggest difference you're going to see with DTG is the white ink cost. White ink in DTG typically is the most expensive. Now, over the years, industry-wide, a lot of people have made it to where, or a lot of manufacturers and distributors are making it to where if you buy CMYK versus white, the purchase price costs the same. But for the printing side of it, you typically are going to print more white ink than you are CMYK. And so on a light garment shirt, it's going to usually be 25% the cost of that same print on a dark shirt. And again, that's different from every DTG, even some shops. So not set in stone, but that's a good kind of rule of thumb, 25, 30% cheaper. And typically, your average 12-inch by 12-inch design on a dark colored shirt with average DTG cost is around $4 for the ink.
That's a dark, you said.
Right. That's mainly because of the white ink. You're printing so much white ink on there. That's sometimes not even taking into account the pre-treatment cost, which typically you're looking at a quarter for the cost of that. It's 25 cents. With the polyprint, it's the most I've spent on a 12 by 12 image was like $1.80 on a dark image. So it's the ink cost is a lot less on the forefront. And then another big factor, no matter what direct garment printer you're looking into, is how much ink do you use over time through maintenance and just waste. So these printers, across the board, they're going to be pulling some ink through the heads to make sure that that the head does not clog up and things like that. Some of them do automatic maintenance, and that helps the heads stay clear and works really well with that. So understanding how much ink you use on that over time is a big thing too.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Everybody always has questions of how to price it as well.
Yeah.
Based on ink cost, based on you can easily calculate the time, per shirt for the person, and based on what you're paying them hourly. Is that what you did to calculate those prices for 1 to 24? And did you separate them from dark versus light garments too?
Yes. Yeah. So typically we're going to separate it from dark versus light.
Got it.
And although, I've actually been toying around with that because traditionally and initially, so this is another thing that's actually changed. I'm glad you asked this question. Traditionally, my DTG pricing would be separated from light and dark. When you're going down this road of, I want to try to come out with one price list or as few amount of price lists as possible, because again, you want to be able to kind of on the fly tell a customer at least a ballpark figure, right?
Sure.
Even if that means that you have to whip out something that you've put on your phone or whatever. This new pricing model that we've put together, we actually charge the same price for a light shirt that we do a dark shirt on DTG. It's kind of like one of those things that as a printer, we can say, all right, well, if we lower this price just a little bit, or if we sometimes are going to take these designs and do them on screen printing, then that's going to be fine across the board. So we're kind of, it's a marketing strategy kind of too, or it's just single shirt pricing, right? Light or dark, same thing. Big caveat. If you're doing contract DTG, you absolutely have to have separate pricing period. And probably for a lot of instances, it's good to have separate pricing, but kind of the goal that we're with this specific shop that we're putting together is as frictionless of a sales cycle as possible. Meaning I want to be able to tell someone very quickly what it's going to cost them, when I can get it to them, and woo them really fast, because sales, even in screen printing, is about emotion. So if they're excited, and I can give them a good price, and I can give them a good turnaround, and I can get them to say yes within the first 1 or 2 phone calls, as a printer, that's amazing, right? So that's really, for me over the years, been a big goal, is figuring out the fastest way to do that, and simplifying the pricing model is one option.
Interesting.
Not lowering the price, simplifying it.
Simplifying. What do you feel like are if someone's looking to buy right now and integrate it into their shop, what are some lessons that you feel like you've learned? Pricing is one here. What are some other lessons that you feel like you've learned that would help save people time or money?
A big one that I've learned over the last couple years, most recent years actually, the last 3 years, is looking into the RIP software you're using immediately. So a lot of these direct garment printers will come with a RIP software that's built for that printer, or they'll have one included with it. Look into that RIP a little bit more. A couple years ago, we switched over to the Digital Factory RIP software from CADLink for our Epson printer. And that was an amazing decision. Some people will look at that RIP software and it's not cheap, quote unquote, but its value is really high. So it's typically $1,000, a little over. But what it does is it controls the printer more and allows you a lot more options to really dial in your printing. As an example, we have that software set up to where when Elizabeth is printing for Trendy Cactus, and remember, she's printing on sizes from newborn to every day, she's printing all the way up to like kids large or youth large, right? So that's a huge size gamut. Now we've extended that even into the adult sizes for that company. We have a queue set up for each one of those different sizes. So we just drag the artwork into the queue and it does everything we need to do, and you just press the print button, right?
Interesting. And that's which RIP program is this called again?
So that's Digital Factory by CADLink.
And that's the one you recommend now?
That's the higher one that I recommend, definitely. And so I pretty much fell in love with that thing when we started using it for Epson, and it turned out that was the same version, the same one that they were supplying with the Polyprint as well. So Polyprint went to them and had a custom version built for them as well. And that was another thing that really was great for me, because what we're also seeing, especially with these machines, is people are setting up pods more. And to clarify what that is with certain direct-to-garment printers, certain pre-treatment, you can, actually most of it, nowadays, you can run it down a conveyor dryer instead of heat press it.
Mm-hmm.
You always want to make sure to have, and that's for the final cure, you always want to make sure to have either a conveyor dryer that runs on gas or an electric conveyor dryer that has forced air. The conveyor dryer that I have in this shop, it's the Vastex Little Buddy X3D, and it's a phenomenal dryer. It's a smaller dryer, it's like 8 feet, and it cures digital stuff awesome. I mean, amazingly. If you get a sample of the polyprint design, it's cured on this dryer, and you'll be very happy about it. So anyways, a pod is where you'll take usually at least 3 DTG printers. The most I've seen was 6, and you'll put them around the infeed of a dryer. And if you have the right software, the right rip, each one of those can be daisy chained up. So if we have 20 of this design that we're printing, it'll go 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So the workflow of the person who's printing is they take the first shirt, they load it onto the printer, they press the button, and it starts printing it. And then they go to this next one, and so on and so forth. So by the time they get to the final one and press go, that first one is either finished or just about done. So they go back, they unload it, load the next shirt, and then they're just going back in circles. And they're just throwing it down a dryer. So that pod thing is really starting to becoming more and more used in the industry, because especially with like the polyprint, you have a printer that's 16,000, it's 15,999, and if you're trying to get production out of it, if you want to add 2 or 3 of those into a shop around a conveyor dryer, you can start getting your production up, and your time, which is the most expensive part of your business, ends up being less. Your production is higher, so your time is less. So having a rip allows you to do things like that, a specific one. And I've really, really liked the CAD-Link so far for the last couple of years, and the things that we've worked with Polyprint and CAD-Link on for this machine as well too has been awesome. So we really enjoyed it.
When do you feel like is it time that, or like a business should not be buying direct-to-garment, or maybe it's even too early to buy direct-to-garment? So we were chatting with a print shop a couple months ago. They bought direct-to-garment first. Obviously couldn't do higher volume. I mean, they were just learning about printing, didn't know what they wanted. Went into screen printing. Now they're only doing screen printing. Direct-to-garment hasn't even been touched since. So, what are the characteristics where it's like if someone's looking into it and you would say, probably not a good time right now, or, maybe focus elsewhere?
Yeah, I would definitely say a couple of things. The number one thing to think about is what business do you have, or what business do you want? Mm-hmm. All right. And whether it's direct-to-garment printing, screen printing, maybe even it's outsourcing is the answer even initially. Okay. Especially nowadays, there's a lot of great partners you can outsource to. But what I don't recommend people getting into direct-to-garment printing is a lot of them who will say, I'm going to buy this one desktop direct-to-garment printer, and desktop meaning it can fit on a large table, right? Mm-hmm. Versus like the large Cornettes and the Rock DTGs that we have now and everything too. Someone coming in saying, I want to buy one of these desktop style printers and replace my screen printing. You know, okay, well, your average screen print job is over 100 pieces. You're going to be printing all day, every day, and your turnaround time is going to end up being a month, right? That's not the fit. The fit for that person would be, how much business do you turn around that is less than 24 pieces, because your minimum is 24, right? So that's an established business who's adding it. DTG is perfect as a complement to screen printing in a traditional screen printing shop. Now, what happens if you're starting out? Well, one big thing is, where are you going to print? Where are you going to do this out of? You want to do it out of a spare bedroom and you don't want to have ink all over the place? Maybe DTG is the right thing for you, and you want to do just small jobs or something along those lines. DTG could be a great way to start.
Isn't it expensive though to get into? I mean, with the pre-treat machine and the actual printer versus like a used press? Totally.
It absolutely can be if the business is not the right fit for it. The mass majority of people who are starting out right out of the gate, typically I would recommend starting with screen printing. Get a starter kit from Ryonet, right? And give it a shot. Call up some buddies, call some friends. If you go to church, talk to them, tell them you want to make some shirts. Where you work, see if you can make some shirts. and see if you like it and see what kind of a business you're going to put together from that point. Versus there's plenty of times where I get phone calls from people who also say, I want to start this business. I've owned businesses before and I want to do it right and I want to do it big. Typically, people who come in and say something like that, it's usually, okay, well, your business model is to print for all the other businesses in your area. So they're going to need large amounts of shirts. That's where screen printing comes into play. Oh, you're going to have a storefront too. Great. Let's put a direct-to-garment printer in there. And the Joe Schmoes who come off the street and say, hey, man, I just want one shirt. You don't turn them away because you also never know what connections that guy has, right? Yeah, there's definitely times when it's not a good idea to put direct-to-garment printing in. The last thing to actually think about too, if you're an existing print shop or if you're getting into printing, what are you going to print on? I had a good example of this. Is I had a shop that printed on, out of 100 orders, 98 of these orders would be 100% polyester, stretch fabric, Under Armour stuff. And they thought that direct-to-garment printing was the solution to some of their problems. I immediately told them it was not, because the mass majority of their printing was done on 100% polyester dark garments that have high stretchability and all kinds of stuff. And the technology just isn't there yet for direct-to-garment printing, right? That's where, okay, let's dial in your ink and things like that come into play. So there are definitely times when I've told plenty of people that I would not recommend putting DTG in their shop. And I've told plenty of people that I would, of course, too, right? But it's definitely something that I'm never afraid to tell someone that maybe it's not the right idea, and let's look at some other avenues first.
So it's really like also your customer base, it sounds like, too. Like if you're doing a lot of team sports, maybe not the best. If you are doing a lot of more of the jersey, heavy polyester type of fabrics. But something like more of if you do have like a retail front, people can come in, test stuff, you can have that there as well. That's interesting.
Right. Another thing that to know on that's become really big too is if you're running fundraiser stores or if you're setting up online stores for different companies or different teams and things like that, and you want to give an on-demand option, right? Those are great for direct-to-garment printing because you can go in and set these stores up and you can say, hey, we're going to run the first order through that you're doing with this player store or team store, school store, whatever, spirit store, call it, merch store, whatever you want to call it. There's tons of names for them. You can say the first run we run through, we're going to do in bulk, and then we can leave it on and just do these specific pieces on demand. And that's where I have a lot of people doing really well with direct-to-garment printing too, is they'll leave these stores up and just do things on demand.
Sure.
And it's a great option there too. So, but yeah, you're totally right. At the end of the day, the first question you want to ask when you're looking at even getting into screen printing or any type of apparel printing, look at the business you have and the business you want. Like, what do you want your customer to be? And if you don't necessarily know what that might fit, that's where you should absolutely give, someone at Ryonet a call, give me a call. I mean, that whole company is built off of printers and musicians. So it's and the mass majority of us have owned or do own screen printing shops. So
what do you think is like the cost hopping in? Like obviously I know you work heavily with TextJet now, but like between TextJet and other brands, Epson Brothers, like what are you people looking at for a price range between that, pre-treater, inks, everything to get going?
Yeah, so let's talk about pre-treatment real fast coming into that, right? So just so everyone knows, when you print on dark shirts, you need to put a layer of what's called pre-treatment on the shirt. Consider this like a primer, okay? And that primer does two major things. One gives the white ink a coverage coverage to adhere to, and then two, it holds the fibers down so that your prints come out nice and shiny and bright and all kinds of good stuff. So you can pre-treat manually by using a Wagner spray gun or by using a roller, but preferably you want to get into a pre-treat machine, especially if you're going to get into a production shop. So my big thing that I always tell everyone is when you're looking at direct-to-garment printing, you either need to put a pre-treat machine in the budget, which right now, your good ones are going to run between $2,000 and $5,000, or understand that you're going to want to purchase that within the first couple months typically of starting out. So it doesn't have to be immediately, because You're gonna do a little bit of a learning curve anyways. So let's take that chunk into play. And then, for instance, the polyprint, it's right under 16,000. So you grab that, you got a pre-treatment machine, call it, there's a couple out there that I really like between $2,000 and $3,000, and then a heat press. The heat press is also one thing that a lot of people skimp on, and unfortunately, this is one of the things that when you buy it out of China, it just doesn't work for long. Okay.
Well, so to pay for what you get here?
Yeah, if you want to buy a $500 heat press every month or every couple of months, go for it. That's a fine business model if you want. I want to buy it and not have to worry about it. So
what's the cost of, what should you budget in for that?
Usually around $2,000 to $3,000. In all honesty, I mean, there's other ones that are under $2,000 that I still like. I really like the Stahl's Hotronics heat presses, for a couple of reasons. That's all I've ever ran for the last 10 years, and they have an amazing warranty on their heating element, and I've never had any of mine go out with the heating element. So, and I've had one of them for right at 10 years now. So they have a couple. They have their Fusion, an air Fusion, and then they also have their auto clam. But they have a version where it actually will hover as well, which for DTG is great. So look that one up. The Fusion or the Hotronics clam that has the hover option on it.
Sure.
Those are great, and they're around $2,000, right? So all said and done, typically you're going to be around 20,000 getting into this. Now, depending on, that's based off polyprint. Depending on other models, it could go up to 30 and above. When I first got into it, with everything else we were buying, I think we spent like 32 getting into it, but we recouped those costs very quickly, pretty much within the first year, I would say, and it was worth it to us at that point because we were able to recoup those costs because we're not saying no, but we were being more smart about the yeses we were saying.
Sure. That's very interesting. So about call it 20 to 25. Sounds like minimum.
Yeah, typically. I mean, and when you're adding it in and you're an existing shop who does vinyl already and stuff, you're going to have the majority of things you need. You're going to have heat press. You're going to have that.
Can you buy used, or it sounds like, especially with direct-to-garment printers and the ink maintenance, buying used sounds a little bit worrisome.
It is. So can you buy a used DTG printer? Sure, you can buy anything. Do I recommend it? 99% of the time, no, I do not. The only reason I would recommend it is if it's from a dealer or if the manufacturer has some refurbished items or something like that. If you're looking at something direct to garment used, a couple of tips. One, ask about the warranty and ask for proof that the warranty is still valid and that if it is, it can be transferred to you.
Sure.
That's a big caveat when we talk about warranties, right? Sometimes they can't be transferred to another company. The second thing is, when was the printhead replaced? This is another thing to think about when you're buying a DTG. How much does a printhead cost to replace? I can't say how great any printer is without telling everyone I talk to that you eventually will have to replace a printhead, period. It's just going to happen, okay? And they usually last 1 to 3. And I've had actually one of my brother machines, we've had printheads, the same printheads in it for about 5 years. And so that's been great. I mean, we use it all the time. We maintain it really well. But typically 1 to 3 years is what you're seeing a printhead, depending on how much you're using them. So asking someone, when did you replace it? Can I see the receipts or proof of it being replaced? It's just really tough when you buy these used.
Sure. You just don't have any idea. And they probably won't have the receipts anyway from...
That's the crappy part about it. Versus I could go out and buy a Riley Hopkins that's 10 years old and throw on some new springs and some other parts, and it'll be like a brand new press outside of a couple things, right? Unfortunately, it's not like that with DTGs. The other thing is the technology is moving so fast. You've got new technology coming out every year. Your average printer is, you have a newer version of that printer every 3 years. That's why it's really important too, whenever you're looking to get one, making sure that, who is supporting this, who can I rely on when I have questions or issues and things like that. So yeah, that's where it's also tough. You buy one used. I mean, even if you buy one used from a guy that tells you he's going to maintain it for the next year, I don't know. That's still just really tough because you have no clue.
Yeah, the maintenance is a lot more important here.
Right. I mean, you really have no clue. Like even, if we go to sell our F2000, I mean, I don't know that I would want to sell it unless it was
Sure.
to someone right down the road, because I know I've taken great care of it all day long. But if I sell it to someone and I don't know exactly what they're going to do with it, what happens if me as the seller selling it to someone who doesn't do things right, and then a month goes by and they're like, hey man, this thing needs a new head, or this is going on.
Right.
How can I then prove that, well, this wasn't because of me, right? Or I don't need to pay for this head.
Sure.
So it's even tough selling a used DTG. So you want to get one that you're going to have for a long time.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's interesting from the brand perspective. So there's two perspectives, right? Like Trendy Butler, more of a brand perspective versus more of a custom perspective. Are heat transfers a way to be able to get into a similar tech but at a lower cost? Or like when does that transfer happen? When you are ordering from FM Expressions all your transfers or something, and then now you want to be able to up it to direct to garment? Like, what are the triggers for that to happen?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of things. Transfers, especially over the years, have gotten great. I love using transfers from a quality place, specifically screen printed transfers. All right, you get into some of these like iron-on transfers and ink things you can print off with an inkjet. The problem you're going to have with those is washability. So if you're coming from a brand's perspective, you don't want to have to deal with that. So my big thing is if you're starting your own apparel line and you're trying to do it on the cheap or save some money, your initial run can absolutely be helped if you do transfers. But make sure that it's a good, reputable company, preferably screen printed transfers, if your designs allow it, right? So that's absolutely a great way to do it. Now, let's say that you go that route and you do your first launch and you sell a couple hundred shirts real quick. And then you do the next launch and you keep doing well, right? What ends up happening, the only issue that you have with those is you need to keep on buying in large bulk to make it worth your while. And as long as your numbers are high, then that's great. Problem comes though when you want to expand that design. If your apparel line has, a handful of designs, buying that amount of, like, let's say 6 designs. If your apparel brand has 6 different designs and you want to buy a couple hundred transfers of each of those designs versus spending $20,000 on a DTG, and this is just, you want to do this as a proof of concept or a hobby, do the transfers. It's great. The issue you run into though is you need to make sure that those transfers are exactly the right size that you want them to be, because you can't change it once you order them. And when you have them shipped to you, no matter how long you wait, they don't shrink enough to make a difference, right? And then as you expand or as you want to have more offerings, then that's when it might be worthwhile for you to take over the production. The other thing with the transfer, and again, I'm not dogging transfers because I love them, and I have a good amount of buddies and customers that have built great businesses off transfers. But if you're running an apparel line, again, we'll go back to that one, and we want to do some test designs and things like that. I want to do a mock-up and throw it on Instagram and see if anyone's interested in it. If I have a DTG and I do that, I can print on demand, boom, right then and there, and again, grab that emotional, oh, I love this, I want to buy it right now for $30. I can grab that emotional sale. If I'm tossing it out there and I'm thinking about then bringing in transfers, I've got a delay. And, as fast as everyone's moving, that's kind of an issue. So expanding with transfers can be kind of tough if you're an apparel line. The turnaround time at times can be tough if you're just a traditional printer providing to people. So someone comes in and says, hey, I need 6 shirts with this design on it and I need it next week. Well, sometimes depending on where your transfers come from, that means you've got to do a rush order on the transfers, got to get them to you quickly. And then if something goes wrong, you don't have control over that, right? So at the end of the day, doing anything in-house, the decision for that should be based off of your business and the fact that you want/value the control that it brings you. That's whether we're talking screen printing or DTG. But the majority of the time, there's a great company, chowderheads.com. It's CHOWDERHEADZ.com. I'll make sure he's cool with me plugging his name. I don't think he'll have a problem with it, but it's a great company, and they have a great website. All the shirts they do is on demand DTG stuff, and they're doing a ton of it. And for him, it worked out perfect because they can have hundreds of designs, and they have all these opportunities to make sales, and they do it. That's where DTG works for him. Similar to like Trendy Cactus as well. And
sure. So it sounds like, I mean, turnaround time's a big thing. Being able to do things a little bit more custom. It's almost like a step up, right? It's like, okay, this is working. Let's move to the next step to be able to allow us more flexibility and serve our customers better.
right, and the thing about it too, the majority of the time, I'm finding that people are purchasing these machines on a leasing deal, on a financing deal. So the other thing that I always talk about is if you're going to go that route and you confirm, yep, I want to get into this, go talk numbers with who you're doing your leasing or financing from, and let's figure that out. Because you might go to them, and because of your credit or whatever, your monthly payment might be a lot more expensive than you expected, right? Versus if you have great credit and good business history, things like that nature, your monthly bill might be cheaper than you expected. And so that can be another decision-making tool as well, just kind of confirming that, But again, like the biggest thing we keep coming back to is do you have the business for it? If so, what is that business? And let's talk through it. It's interesting. When people call in a Ryonet or when I talk to people about getting into DTG, I ask just as many questions about their business and what they're going to use it for as they ask me about the printer.
Sure.
If not, I ask more, because my key thing is to make sure that, does this printer fit in your shop? And if it does, great. You're going to love it. If it doesn't, that's great too. I'm going to recommend you go here, talk to this person about that, because, and that's what I've also told people. I've been a customer of Ryonet, screenprinting.com, ever since I started. And from the customer side, I really enjoyed it. And then I've worked with Ryonet, for, almost 10 years now. And from the side of working for Ryonet, it's been great too, because at the end of the day, we have all of these core values, but really they can all kind of come down to the business model of, we want to make screen printers better, or printers, just garment decorators, better. It's a very, very simple business model. If I can help you succeed, then we can do a lot of business together, right? And even if that means, if you're calling me the DTG expert at this company, or me the guy that someone recommended to talk to about direct garment printing, even if that means that I tell you, hey, this probably isn't the right fit for you, either or right now. I mean, I would much rather say this is not the right fit than recommend you the wrong thing.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, we exactly do the same, and I think people respect that too.
Totally.
Yeah, that's huge. Is there anything any shop that you're following that's super interesting, or a book that you're reading super interesting and other people could pick up? Any tactic or something or strategy that you found very interesting and other shops using?
The Chowderheads has got a great thing going. I really like them. And again, I'll make sure they're cool with me talking about them. but I'm sure that they're fine with it. They've got a really great thing going. There's a really cool shop that popped up on my radar recently, and it's a shop that's run out of their house as well. So a couple of things I like to follow. There's a YouTuber, the Screen Print Life. He's got a couple of really cool things going on. Of course, Ryanet's YouTube. It's always great. But there's a new guy. He's not crazy new, but he's been doing some really neat stuff.
What's his name?
Oh, I'm pulling him up right now. Lee Stewart is the name.
Lee Stewart.
Yeah, that's the name of his YouTube channel. Here, I'll send it to you right now.
Awesome. Lee Stewart. I'm assuming you could just search Lee Stewart Printing, or.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I would link to this video that he put together as well, because
I'll check it out.
A big thing.
Oh yeah, I did see this. Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, he spent a lot of time in just perfecting the home setup.
Another company that everyone listening should totally look up: Snarky Cancer.
Snarky Cancer.
Wild story and great group of people. They're out of the Washington area. Everything that they do, they put so much towards cancer research and funding, and so they're doing some really, really cool stuff. but their marketing is really fun and really cool. So that's something that I also really stress to people. Like when we put the shop together, we have space made in the shop for Instagram photography, product photography, things like that. You don't need a lot of space for that, but getting your message out and marketing is such a big thing these days, but you don't have to overthink it. But this guy, the Crazy Home Screen Printing Setup, he talks a little bit about that. And Snarky, they do all kinds of really cool things. Great people, again, too.
Yeah,
so
I'll check this out. Yeah, Lee's also on Lee Stewart 38 on Instagram as well, where he posts a lot of really cool pictures and videos and everything like that. So definitely check him out. Luke, This has been awesome. This is very, very helpful. I'm pretty pumped to write this out and document it all and be able to share it. Thank you so much for being able to join us. Everybody, you can reach Luke. We'll post your email in the
put my email
so they don't have to
there.
spell it, and they can be able to reach you if they have more questions as well. And it'll be very cool to see how those videos come out, and I love the educational materials as well. Perfect. Thanks, Luke. I really appreciate joining us and sharing all that knowledge.
Yeah, no problem. I actually just thought I got to do one more plug for something else that's really important.
Of course.
So one humongous thing I can't stress enough, whether you're screen printer or DTG, is you have to always think about the quality of the shirt. There's a thing in art that says crap art in is crap art out. If you have bad art, you have bad separations, bad film, bad screens, bad prints, right? Same thing with shirts. If you're using crappy shirts or you're using shirts that do not have a good quality to how they're made, you're not going to have good prints. So I highly always recommend that people work on that and work on possibly upselling when the option is there. Right now, my top one is our all-made shirt at Ryonet. I'm not saying it because I work at Ryonet, but it prints phenomenally on our DTGs, and that's all that we sell right now for adult stuff. That's on DTG through this. So the all-made brand has been phenomenal. It's got a great story behind it too, which goes back to is a great marketing material. But that's my last little thing that I recommend is definitely checking out all-made. It's really cool.
Heck yeah. Sweet.
Awesome,
Luke. Truly appreciate the time. This has been ultra helpful.
Heck yeah.
And thank you for, of course. Thanks for joining us on the show.
No problem, man. You guys have a great one. I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Bye.
Will do. Bye.